Hi everyone, welcome back to another video rant. What should we call it? I don't know. I have had a lot of activity on my page of late, as you guys know. Some people get really upset when I point things out, and it upsets with their ideological framework. And there's a lot of people who then tell me to shut up and Egyptologize, shut up and dribble, how dare you have a mind and how dare you use it for anything other than Egyptology, which tells me, A, that the historical world has been apolitical for too long and fetishized for too long and made different and separate for too long. And B, history is used as a prop for the haves in society as a means of keeping the status quo. So I can't be a willing contributor to that if I see it. Once you see something, you can't unsee it, right? So I have to try to speak out and do what I can, even if it's a little crazy. Yay, Michael, rant time. I know, right? Hey, Aaron. Hey, Emma. Hi, Martin. Hey, Hala. Hello to everyone. This is great. Hey, Beth. So today, what I want to do, and where's my book? Well, first, let me start out by reading something that you guys know that I have a lot of people on the page that don't like it when I talk about, we have to understand reasons for looting, or we need to think about why Jim Crow statues are so problematic, or we are all of us racist. What does that mean? We live in racist systems, and people get very upset and call me a commie, pinko, Marxist, all of these things. But I have one I would like to quote because I posted on my page this article about blue cities and how extraordinarily racist the systems in Democrat, and I mean politically Democrat with a big D, cities are. That's why I use the word blue. And that none of us are clean. But it's also the favorite tool of those on the conservative side of the American political spectrum in the red cities or red areas to say, you guys are worse than we are. We're not racist at all. You guys are. So a way of deflecting blame, a way of keeping clean, a way of feeling that you are fine. Your cities aren't racist. It's all of those cities like Chicago and Baltimore and Los Angeles, those horrible blue cities, or Houston and Dallas for that matter, Austin. Remember, I grew up in Texas. All of those cities, the ones that are bad. And so I have here from Galen Beetle Brock. You are now being quoted, Galen. She says, wondering why so many racial issues are happening in blue cities at least shows that you have some ability for critical thinking. So she complimented me and tells me that because I'm able to criticize my own space, I can be a critical thinker. So that's good. Yay. I think it was not meant to be quite so happily positivist, but that's fine. She says, Democrats have a vested interest in keeping blacks in a situation where they need government to survive. I kind of agree with her on that. I don't think it's just Democrats. I think it's American haves, those in the social power spectrum of society. We all have this incentive, and I'll get to that in a bit. But I don't think it's only Democrats. I think it's Republicans too. And I think it's those of us with white skin or who have brown skin but are privileged in some way and who can create a system in which people are kept down. We somehow feel that this serves us and our status quo in a system. So I'm going to agree with that. And then she says, Democrats love to tax and spend program after program. Well, remember, I grew up in the 70s and 80s. I was born in 1972. My 50th birthday is soon. And I remember welfare being shut down during my lifetime. I remember all of a sudden the influx of homeless people on the streets as the mental health institutions were shut down. I remember people talking about welfare moms and, all of these things have been shut down. And now we barely have food kitchens, and homelessness in cities like Los Angeles or San Francisco or New York or Chicago is off the hook because the social programs have been so gutted and so destroyed. So I would disagree with that. And as a Democrat with a big D, I would actually like to see more spending for social systems. But then here we get to some interesting points, and Galen continues. Republicans prefer to see people succeed and prosper on their own initiative. I'm going to read that again. I think it's important. Republicans prefer, and you can insert conservatives. Let's just, when I say Republicans in your mind, think conservatives, because then if you're coming to me from Holland or from Singapore or from China or from Turkey or from Peru, it doesn't matter. You have conservative and liberal too, so just insert conservative here. But she writes, Galen Beetlebrock writes, Republicans prefer to see people succeed and prosper on their own initiative. Programs like opportunity zones help this happen for people. Lifting people out of poverty never, don't want to misquote. Lifting people out of poverty happens only with capitalism, never with socialism or communism. So and that's end quote. So we have a statement that says that initiative and hard work are all that people need to lift themselves out of a difficult situation, that there is nothing else that is needed, that there is no entitlement, that thus what I meant to read in here, that the person like Gail Beetlebrock, who is somebody who's winning in society, is winning in society because of her own personal individual, American individualism, initiative. And that is why she is doing so well in society. And those people who are not doing well have no initiative. So this is the ideology. What she has said here is it's couched in systems, it's couched in political parties, it's couched in policy. But what Gail Beetlebrock is saying is ideological. It is all ideological. It is as ideological as evangelical religion is ideological. It is making a claim that is not based on evidence, it is not based on fact, it is based on belief. It is based on what is good and what is bad. It is based on morality in her mind. Who works hard and who doesn't work hard. That's where this is going. And so I pulled out, again, some ancient Egyptian literature. And this is a good one for you guys to use, William Kelly Simpson, Literature of Ancient Egypt. So if you want to follow along, we shall be reading in the Maxims of Ptah-hotep, also called the Instructions of Ptah-hotep. This is a text that was written down in the Middle Kingdom, around 1800 BCE, to be very basic about dates, which I always am. Dates are difficult, and exact dates are even more difficult. But it's potentially an Old Kingdom text, but we don't need to worry about that. Let's say that it represents the Egyptian reality going back to 2500 BCE all the way up to 1500 BC. I think that one can say that what I'm about to read is a basic ideological understanding of how society is meant to work. And it is stunning, and yet not very surprising, since we have the same DNA and very much the same social systems, that the ancient Egyptians would be saying exactly what I just read to you from this modern Republican telling me that it's all based on initiative and making it about political parties and making it about morality, making it about who works hard, who's a good person, and who's not. It brings up ideas of prosperity gospel that are very much in the news today, that if you are rich in the United States, you have been blessed by God, and thus you should have the riches that you have now. God has blessed you, right? So let's read what Ptah-hotep says about social position and where it comes from and how you're meant to treat other people. So he says, well, let's start back. Oh, here. I marked, I'm going to I'm like, that's not what I wanted to read. Okay, here we go. Men punish him who transgresses the laws, and it is a transgression even in the eyes of the rapacious or the greedy. It is baseness which takes away their wealth. Exactly what we just heard, right? It is those who have initiative that are rich, and those who don't have initiative deserve what they get. And here we have, it is baseness, their ignorance, their stupidity, their lack of thought, their lack of work. That's what takes away their wealth. Wrongdoing has never brought its venture safe to port. So not only are people who are poor thought to be base and ignorant, they are thought to be wrongdoers inherently. This is part of complex civilization. As soon as civilization is formed, you have social inequality. As soon as that social inequality of the top 2% is formed, that top 2% must create an ideological way of thinking, not necessarily religious, but ideological, that maintains their place in society. So, yes, Let me skip down. Oh, for those of you that have this book, I am on page, what page am I on? 162. 162. No, I'm skipping down to stanza 7. So I like these little instructions. They tell you how to act so you can get ahead in society without rocking the boat. So we have here, if you are one of the guests at the table of one who is greater than you, accept what he gives you when it is set before you. Look at what is before you and do not pierce him with much staring, for to annoy him is an abomination of the spirit. So this is pretty direct, right? If a rich dude invites you to his house and gives you some stuff, or if a rich dude throws you some crumbs and says, here's your check for today, or whatever it is, don't rock the boat. Just work hard. Someday you could be rich like him. But it's extraordinary the way one is told what is good and what is bad, what is in accordance with ma'at, and what is right and wrong is here to serve the wealthy and the rich. So now the rich man in this sentence, Simpson translates it as a magnate. So that's what we're going to have in the next section. As for a magnate, when he is at the distribution of food, his conduct is in accordance with the command of his will. He will give to whomsoever he favors, for it is the counsel of the night which comes to pass, and it is the will that extends his hand. A magnate gives only to him who has attained to being a man of position. So the magnate is only going to give to people who deserve it, who are good, who are well behaved, who are sitting at the table when something is given and don't go, why didn't you give me more? Why do you get to have everything? No. Keep your mouth shut. You don't get to say that. You say, oh, thank you, sir. May I have another, right? The eating of bread, and remember, eating of bread is like the getting of money, if you like. The Egyptians called bread money in the same way that in the 70s, you hear the lingo, just trying to get some bread, man. That's money in Egyptian sense too. So the eating of bread is under the dispensation of God, and it is only the ignorant man who will complain about it. Well, there's a way to keep society running according to the status quo, where the haves have and the poor do not, and the poor are blamed for it. And it is exactly what Galen Beetlebrock told me, that nobody, so here, let's get back to this capitalism and socialism thing today, right? Socialism is simply distribution of wealth. The state or some other great man or magnate or whatever takes in wealth and then redistributes that wealth. You can do that by means of patronage, which is what's happening in ancient Egypt. You have a magnate, you have a great man. He's got, some people of lower status living around his land, and he distributes as he feels fit, and they shut the hell up and do what he needs, and then you have some distribution. It is socialism. It is socialism disguised within a patronage system of great social inequality. Socialism in our country is taxation, and then you take that money and you put it towards public schools, whether you have a child or not, or you put that money towards healthcare systems. Wish we could do that in the United States a little better. California's better, but we could improve for certain. You take money and you give it to older people who have retired in the form of Social Security in the United States. That is socialism. So socialism is a means of really making sure that the entire system of patronage and the haves and have-nots within a complex civilization doesn't blow up into constant revolution, constant looting, and constant pain. So socialism is something that every single human society has, whether they have it or not. In Galen Beetlebrock's eyes is immaterial, because what she is seeing is the ideology of how you present the thing. That today, in today's discourse, it is a knee-jerk reaction for people on the right to say that socialism is immoral. It is evil. It is wrong in the eyes of God. That only capitalism can lift you up. Only capitalism can help shape a real and true winning person in society. That only capitalism is this means of rewarding those who would not loot, would not steal. Capitalism is somehow a fairer way, or a more divinely sanctioned way of running a society. Now, you step back from this and you think, well, wait a minute, because in capitalism today, don't we have more social inequality than we've ever had on the planet. Doesn't capitalism also create poverty? Indeed, it does. But this is not, this discourse that I'm having with Galen Beadle Brock is not about truth or facts or evidence. It is about ideology, that which cannot be proven nor disproven, what is right and what is wrong in the eyes of the beholder. So capitalism is the good thing, and it allows the person who is rich within the capitalist system to be the honorable one who is in charge of the socialism, though they don't call it that, who creates the jobs, who gives out to the other people. And that is why in today's society, with all that we're talking about today, when people talk about taking down Jim Crow statues, or that looting is evil and wrong and so bad and how dare you, we can't even try to understand it. It's so evil we can't even try. That socialism is akin to communism, and look at where that's gotten us, and oh my goodness, no. This support of the oligarchy, in a sense, it is a conservative ideology that serves the people in power, and it is as old as complex civilization itself. It is as old as the rising of the wealthy in the world to create a system that serves us. And so this book by William Kelly Simpson is filled with mechanisms, ideological mechanisms that keep people in line, that keep the 3-4 top percent from overturning the top 1-2%, because they believe that they'll someday be the top 1-2%, and it maintains this system through ideological understanding of Ma'at, the Egyptian of what is right and wrong. And any book that is moral or written about the right way to go about things contains exactly the same social coding. So whatever religious system you grew up with, whatever you feel you want to read, you will find social coding in there. Don't rock the boat. Stay with the system. Make sure that you're not this revolutionary socialist who's going to upturn all of this. God doesn't want you to do that. So it's the Ma'at of the ancient Egyptian world, because that's what the maxims of Ptah-hotep were, a way to live in accordance with Ma'at. And I am still stunned and shocked by the lack of Egyptological engagement with Ma'at being used to prop up the wealthy and the rich. And instead, we see it in such a positivist light that Ma'at is only this beautiful, pure and thing like the 10 Commandments. Even the 10 Commandments encode a means of maintaining the status quo and not rocking the boat and keeping the rich in place. Read them again if you're not sure. It is what we talk about today when we talk about law and order. A law and order president, a law and order campaign, people who are interested in the prison industrial complex, who are interested in making the poor bad people or making poverty criminal. Yeah? And so if you go into an American prison, you will see an overabundance of brown and black people. You will see the poverty structures represented in our American prisons. And who benefits from that? Well, it keeps the black and brown communities on edge, fearful, terrorized, and never able to get the entitlement and conditions in which they can have the initiative to work and do better within this world. It also actively supports and enriches those who are part of that military or prison industrial complex. And so in states where there are private prisons in which people can buy a share in a prison, does your retirement fund actually have prison stocks? That's a thing in the United States. Does your retirement fund have stocks for buying weapons to make sure that the police is a military industrial complex as well, to keep people in line and to keep people contained? There's a lot of people in the top 1-2% who are benefiting monetarily, financially from maintaining the system. Ancient Egypt, no different. And in ancient Egypt, one could argue that it's a system like in the United States where you don't have to go out and exploit people who are not you. You can make sure you keep your own people down, that you send your own people, your own overabundant population, your own base population, to use the word that Simpson used for poor or ignorant in the maxims of Ptah-hotep, to send them to the mines and to the quarries. What do you produce in a mine? You get a whole lot of gold and electrum and really awesome fancy stuff that the king and the rich people get to show to separate and socially distance themselves. What do you get in a quarry? You get all kinds of hard stones and quartzite and granite and other things so that you can maintain that social distance. Some people get to build in these hard stones, other people do not, but the people who work them, who have had their nose and ears cut off for doing some sort of transgression and are sent to Nubia, they're the ones who get to sit in a granite quarry with a dolerite pounder all day after day, pounding to get this far in a granite quarry, making an obelisk for a king or something like that. This is the ideology of the haves. And this is why the moment that we're having right now is so very important, because this ideology has kept so many of us, myself included, cushy, happy puppies and rainbows. You're a good person. You're not individually racist. You're not pushing anybody down. Your success is God-given. It is your own personal prosperity gospel. You were born into it. We get to feel like we are good people. We get to ignore our privilege and ignore the situation that got us here in the first place. Ignore our skin color, say that we are colorblind, and ignore the systemic policies that keep all of these things separate and different. So I want all of you to go out into the world today and start thinking that we are all of us to blame. We are all of us in this system. Not one of us is clean. And when you try to make yourself feel better and tell yourself that I am not wrong, I am not bad, stop and be like, wait, what's going on? What could I look at a little bit closer with curiosity, with interest? How can I try to understand my privilege and position in this world? If you are a person who is not privileged and in a great position in this world, and you're angry about it and you're trying to figure out what the situation is, then how can you game this system of ideology that is used to turn you into something that is base and ignorant and deserving of what you get? Hell, I'll end this with one of the first times that I started to really think and speak along these lines and tell you how this worked in my own life personally. And then I'll let the commentary fly. But, I grew up in Texas, and I grew up in Houston. And my ex-in-laws, because my in-laws are not my in-laws anymore, alhamdulillah, I am now remarried to my beautiful half Japanese, half Spanish adopted man from Hawaii, Remy. But my ex-in-laws were the Trumper types, the super conservative types. This is before Trump, of course, because I got divorced before Trump. But I remember a conversation in which we were talking about poverty and American conditions. And there was a point when they said to me, using ideology, using ideological tools, though I didn't really identify it at the time, it just frustrated me, made me so angry. And I think I remember staying up half the night, like just thinking I should have said this, I could have said that, and like piecing it together in my mind, puzzling it. Where does this come from? But the conversation went pretty much like this. People in the inner cities, code for Black, right? Black Americans. Those people, they're poor, but I grew up poor too, said my father-in-law, ex-father-in-law, but father-in-law then, who grew up during the Depression, who grew up as a preacher's son, who didn't have a lot in the world, who equated his own upbringing with deep poverty. And he had made something of his life and become an engineer and was, a very wealthy man. And so those people in inner cities, they need to work harder and they just don't understand. And I remember saying, and I was not understood, I remember saying, you did not grow up poor. You didn't have families ripped apart who were terrorized by police and prison industrial complexes. I don't think I said it this well. I know I didn't, because I was mad the whole night. You didn't grow up and I was reading Tainter at the time, The Collapse of Civilization. You didn't grow up with a system in which everything was unraveling, in which people can't even help each other within a system because the poverty is so bad that people are numbing out on drugs and alcohol, that people are abandoning their children because the poverty is that socially untenable, and it creates despair in a population. And I remember both of them, my in-laws, looking at me and shaking their heads sadly at my ignorance and naivete and saying, we were very poor and we kept our families together. So we have a means of making ourselves feel noble and good and pure and right and in the eyes of the Lord, whoever your Lord is. And that those people who do drugs, who loot, who live in ignorance and squalor, who don't have good hair, who have crappy clothes, those people in their eyes don't have initiative, deserve what they get. And this is just the way, it's a God-given reality. If you grow up in that situation in which your grandparents and your great-grandparents and your great-great-grandparents lived in this terrorized reality where you were told you just don't have initiative, don't you think you're going to start to internalize some of that and believe it? And it takes the rare spark to be like, we got to fight, and then you're pushed down again. We got to fight, and you're pushed down again. Think of what that could possibly be like. Now, I'm not saying that white people don't have poverty. And I'm not saying that white people can't have difficult situations in their lives and that they don't go through social traumas and they aren't beaten and abused and put down by a system, but not like the Black people or people of color in American society. And it is time to understand, here's my main point again, how we ideologize this stuff. And how we make it the one who is good, who is bad, how we ideologize socialism itself as something that is evil. Even though the people who are saying this are actually benefiting from socialism, but because they don't call it that, you don't call a tax break for a mortgage for an upper middle class person socialism, though it very much is. You don't have to call it that. You don't call it welfare. You can say that you benefit from initiative, but really you're benefiting from policy within your own community. So I think these maxims and instructions will give me lots of fodder for the days to come, but I wanted to make it about the ideology of social inequality, and I suppose that is what I will call this little mini lecture, and you guys can discuss. Looting is theft. It is criminal behavior. It is not acceptable under any circumstances. Ah, Dirk. Liberalism is a mental disorder. Oh, see, look, you're going all ideological, Dirk. Good job for helping me make my point. Looting is let me just take this one thing. Looting is unacceptable under any circumstances, Dirk. The looting that happens amongst communities of color in the United States when something like police brutality occurs happens in a way that is very safely and cleverly done. It may not seem so. Most of that looting is happening within one's own Black community or to businesses and not to people's homes. White looting of Black spaces like the Tulsa Massacre burned down thousands of people's homes and terrorized families. Now you're going to tell me, well, the Tulsa Massacre wasn't looting. Wasn't it? It was looting. And then I'll take it down to the looting in itself. You're ideologizing by saying that I am saying looting is good. That's an easy way to demonize me. And it's been done before on my page, and you can try it again, Dirk. But I'm not saying that looting is good. I am saying that we can try to understand why people loot. And we can look at a society that is so deeply uneven in its social inequality that the looting is happening because we are making the looting happen. We, white haves, are the ones who are creating the conditions for the looting. And then it's so easy ideologically to then turn around and blame the black person as the quote goes, with their black hands reaching in to pull out the television set, and blame them as being non-human or evil. That is exactly what I am talking about. So it is such a clever ideological trick to create the conditions for the looting because the social inequality is so bad and the anger and terrorization is so high. Then when the looting happens, go, I caught you. And then you put that all over the news and you say how evil people are. That was also a situation in my past life, which I've talked about before, that I would get into arguments with my then husband, and then I would just lose it and get so angry. And then he would calmly go, oh, you see, you have an anger management problem. So I am clearly the right one. You create the conditions to make the person freak out and lose it. And then you turn around and you say that that person is the immoral one. That is how ideology works to keep people in place. I will end it there. And I'm not going to read any more comments, you guys. Thanks for writing them. I love all of this discussion. But if I do, then I'm just going to go on another mini rant. So it's 30 minutes of content for today. Thanks for tuning in. And till next time.